So your tennis racket got stolen.
It did. Oh, my goodness me.
What happened?
It's all the news here in Adelaide. It's all anyone can talk about.
Excalibur.
That's right. Look, this is the problem with tennis racket bags. Like guitar bags, they're shaped exactly like the contents inside them. So you don't know the contents are missing until you open them. So I literally arrived at the tennis court, zipped it open, reached inside, and there was nothing there except, balls and crap and, a couple of sweatbands.
Didn't you notice the weight when you took it out of the car and carried it to the court?
No, there were a couple of tennis ball cylinders in there. So no, I didn't notice it.
So it was stolen from in your car, was it?
I don't know.
And the bag was re-zipped and everything.
Yes. It's almost like a magic trick. It's bizarre.
You sure you didn't lose it?
How am I going to lose it? What am I going to do?
You sure it didn't just crumble under the might of that workout I gave you when I was in Australia on court?
That's right. It didn't disintegrate in my hand.
No. Which we haven't talked about, by the way.
No. Let's stay on this. Losing my racket's the second worst thing that's happened recently. That match was the worst thing.
What? I guess you just buy another one and move on. There's nothing to be done.
Well, the difference is I'm a year on now in playing, and so actually I've gone back to the drawing board, to all the lists of best rackets, and I've got to go back and try a few and see if I go for the exact same one. Of course, there's a new model now, because I did at the end of the day borrow one from someone else at the club. Someone said, I've got a spare one here, and I said, oh, great. And I could not believe the power that came out of that racket. It was amazing. It became my new favourite racket for the day. Okay. So that makes me wonder if I chose unwisely with Excalibur.
Just make sure you don't get one that's too heavy. It's easy to get one that's 10, 20, 30 grams too heavy, and it really makes a difference on your elbow. Yeah,
that's true. And that's what I love about this one. For those who are actually tennis fans, I had it's a head speed team racket, which is sort of used by Djokovic. It's a pretty good racket. So,
are you sure yours wasn't souvenired by a fan?
I can't be sure. No, I can't. Do you mean a podcast fan or a tennis fan?
Probably not a tennis fan. You're definitely a better podcaster than you are a tennis player.
I enjoy that guy's podcast co-host science videos. I'm going to steal his tennis racket.
Well, how's your game coming along anyway? Playing all right?
Well, yeah, I just happened to I still had the racket from my neighbour that I borrowed for when you were here, and so I played with that, and that's pretty powerful racket too, and except it's a bit thick around the handle, so I feel like I've been holding onto something a bit too fat, and that makes you feel very clumsy. Clumsiness is a word that comes quickly to mind when I think about my tennis.
You as I said when we played, the result didn't go your way, but every time I play you, I'm noting improvement. You are coming
improving.
along.
That's what I am. I am. You are the hare and I am the tortoise. And
right.
Just continuing on.
Okay. I've got some parish notices. First of all, I can't remember in what context we discussed this, but we discussed people's names not fitting what their interests are and things like that. I think we used the example of a guy called Jeff Moon who has no interest in the moon. I can't remember the full context, but anyway.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
We heard from someone else who said, my last name is Beers. Growing up, a lot of people kind of poked fun at my name. Even coaches in school would call me Beersy. Finally, when I turned 21, I gave booze a try. And I thought, this is disgusting. And I've tried a few times and I keep thinking, why drink when there's a perfectly good Dr. Pepper right there? My dad is also a preacher and he makes his own communion wine that everyone raves about. And I have to take a shot with the wafer over my tongue to block some of the taste. So there we go.
Oh, wow.
Beersy, who doesn't like beer or any alcohol for that matter.
Interesting.
Do you like Heinz baked beans? I know your surname's Hine, not Heinz, but how do you feel about Heinz products?
I am drawn to them, I have to say. I would prefer to buy them. The family prefers a different brand of tomato sauce or ketchup, as Americans call it, but I prefer to buy Heinz just because it's because it's my name,
Right.
or it's similar to my name. It just jumps out from the shelf, and it's always been that way. So I love Heinz baked beans. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I heard from loads of people about 2 jobs, people who have 2 jobs. This was something we brought up as a podcast idea when I talked about, who did I talk about? I talked about the makeup artist who was also a prison warden, and another one. I heard from loads of you. One of them was Tro2339, who says, I know a guy who's an air traffic controller and an architect. Architecture is really his passion, but he only went to university to get his degree in it quite late after having been an air traffic controller for many years, so now he does both. That's 2 pretty cool jobs.
Oh, yeah, gosh. Yeah. That is an attention to detail person. No question about it. I don't like the idea of them doing, like, if they're studying architecture, like, you know, on the side while they're working as an air traffic controller. So every time a plane comes in and they've just got their head over, you know, a big sketch piece of paper and they're sketching something, they can look up and go, oh, heck, here's the 746 from, you know, 730 from Singapore. Quickly, runway 2. Oh,
Get
gosh.
that done.
He keeps looking at it and he keeps drafting.
They are 2 very cool jobs. Did you know that architecture was my second choice at university? My first choice was journalism, and if I didn't get into that, I'd put architecture as my second choice.
I did not know that. I don't know why I didn't know that. I do remember the day we filled out those forms, but I don't remember. I didn't know you had any interest in architecture, really?
Well, I always thought it would be a cool job. When I was a little kid, I loved designing floor plans of my dream house. That would be how you would still have, even though it was like my dream house in the future, it still had mum and dad's bedroom in it, and then where my bedroom was. So I hadn't quite taken myself to adulthood, but I loved designing things, and I always liked sort of, you know, maths and stuff. So I just thought, I never had a passion for architecture. I never imagined doing it. I only ever wanted to be a journalist. So that was my first choice, and I just didn't think beyond it. But you had to put a second choice.
We had to put 5, I think.
Yeah. And I think I just thought, architecture, that sounds like that'd be a cool job. I would like to do that. Like, it sounds pretty cool. Probably the grades required to get into architecture were harder than the ones to get into journalism. I don't know. Yes. So having it as a second choice may have been silly, but I got into journalism anyway. So
you did your year and then dropped out and became a journalist.
Yeah, I guess I did.
You got a cadetship, yeah.
I got a cadetship at the newspaper, so I got the job I was aiming for before I finished my degree. Hence, I never finished my journalism degree. If you want to know more about it, all correspondence can be sent to Dr. Brady Harron at
honorary.
Yeah, yes.
OBE.
Very much honorary.
Yeah, but your drawing is hilarious. Like it's.
Yeah, but not with architecture, you can use a ruler and stuff. Like, I think I could draw a house plan. I know I can't draw a hand or, like, a person's face, but I think I could draw, like, a floor plan or rule straight lines.
But I always think of architects as being people that can, you know, they have those cool sort of black markers and they could pretty much sketch up anything, you know. They're so talented. Well,
true, my freehand is terrible, but I don't know. Not many architects have to draw freehand stuff.
No, but, you know, they sort of go, they do, because I've dealt with a few architects with, you know, work buildings, and they sort of sketch something out around here, and even if you're looking at it, you're going, like, they're doing lines, but they're doing it freehand. You go, oh, yeah, well, that works really well. That's a door, and that goes through there. And
well, I didn't end up becoming an architect anyway, so it doesn't matter, does it?
No, it doesn't. Do you remember what else was on your list? What was like 3rd, 4th, and 5th?
No,
do you have any idea?
No. What was on your list?
I got into a marketing degree. I got into my first option, but it was at Whyalla, the campus of the University of South Australia, and I drove to Whyalla and I went, no, I'm not doing this.
Oh my goodness, yeah. That's like going and doing it in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like a regional campus.
I didn't know that. You got marketing at Whyalla?
I did, yeah. I did. I got some marketing with UniSA, but I never did it. I deferred and then reapplied my scores after a year, and I got into arts at Flinders, and so I did that and then transferred that into education at Flinders, and then didn't finish that. I did another year of that and then dropped out and went and did, you know, ministry theology, which, I did a few degrees in that. So,
yeah, right. You were a lost soul for a little while. The idea of living in Whyalla is incredible to me. Like,
I know. I went there and I was like, no, I'm not doing this. It takes like 6 hours to get there.
It's this like country town far from Adelaide.
Sure, it's lovely, but like I was just like, no, I'm not doing this. It's like that time I nearly got into the Northern Territory Police and then realised I had to move to the Northern Territory. And then
Why did you even put Whyalla as a first choice? Had you never seen Whyalla before?
I put marketing as a first choice, and it just happened to be offered in Whyalla. I don't know why. I think, well, there was a girl in our class who had a brother that was at that campus, and she made it sound a bit like a party town. You know, he was president of the student union. They were getting bands in, and it sort of sounded like, oh yeah, go away and be in a uni town. That'd be pretty cool. But then I went there, and I was like, no.
All right, we talked about things that one is indifferent about, things that you don't like, but you also don't dislike. You just are completely neutral. And we heard from Armando Alvarez WF, who says, I am indifferent to avocado. I don't dislike avocado. It's fine. If I see a sandwich or salad comes with avocado, it won't make me particularly more or less interested in getting it. If you ask me, would you like to pay $2.50 to add avocado? I will always say, no thanks. But if you want to throw an avocado on the sandwich, sure, I'll have it.
Here's my theory with avocados. You've got to think of it as a garnish. So on its own, it's not great. Like if someone says, do you want a peach? You go, yeah, I'll have a peach. But an avocado, you're like, well, you've got to think of it, but anything with avocado in it, you're like, oh, does this have avocado? Oh, fantastic. Like on a focaccia or in salads and different things like that. It really
is that
adds
garnish
something.
or is that like I guess it's kind of garnish. Isn't garnish something that's more for show?
Oh, is it? I always think of it. Well, yeah, perhaps, yeah, actually, no, I think you're right. That's right. So it's not a garnish. You just got to think of it as something that adds something to the main thing. It's not the main thing. A passenger.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a passenger food.
Another thing that came up last episode, you probably won't remember, Tim, because you never remember what was in the previous episode. I talked about this idea of having like a big hamper or basket that all the listeners send in presents to, and we have this big gift box, and at the end it gets given to one of our listeners.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
People were really into this, so I'm going to do it. If you have a look on our website or in the show notes and that, I'll have an address and details of things you can send. So we're going to make that a thing. So start sending stuff in. I'll probably come up with some details. Like, obviously, we don't want anything perishable.
There goes the rest of the year for you.
Well, it's going to get sent, hopefully, to my post box, and I'll just go and pick it up once a week. I'll just pick up the stuff and dump it in. But I want it to be, tell us the story of the thing you sent and why you sent it. And we'll talk about the things on the podcast as they come in. Build up the hype and anticipation. So more details to come, but the response to that was such that we're going to go ahead and do it. We're going to press the button. Awesome. So if you've got something you want to send, make it something distinctive from your town. Or if you're from Whyalla, send us a handful of dust. I don't know, what would you send from Whyalla?
It's a bit harsh on Whyalla. It's a lovely part of the South Australian desert.
It's not. Whyalla's not nice. All right. If you listen to this podcast in Whyalla, definitely get in touch. Tell us something good about Whyalla.
I have to say, Whyalla is halfway to Port Lincoln, which apparently is really, really beautiful. But I've never gone there because I can't. Because it puts me off. If it's like, if it's because Whyalla's only halfway, and that's like forever to get to anyway.
I mean, Whyalla's not that far away. Port Lincoln is okay. Port Lincoln's nice. Port Augusta, terrible. Don't go to Port Augusta. But Port Lincoln's nice.
Beautiful people. These are dusty. I find it difficult because I grew up in southern Victoria, and there's grass, there's lawn everywhere, and trees. And so in South Australia, there's not a lot of lawn. And when you get out where there's not many trees, it does feel pretty arid.
Yes, it's stark, barren. I don't know why people live in Whyalla. Like, what makes one live in Whyalla? Like, because you could just move to Adelaide.
They may have a farm in the area. Or there's there's a large industry there. Is it a copper mine? What is it?
Oh, there was mines up that way. Maybe there's
massive mining.
Hang on. All right, hang on. I can't not quickly just look at the précis of what Whyalla. Hang on. Whyalla is a city in South Australia. It was founded as Hummocks Hill, as it was known until 1916. It's the fourth most populous city in the Australian state of South Australia, after Adelaide, Mount Gambier and Gawler. And along with Port Pirie and Port Augusta, is one of 3 towns that make up the Iron Triangle. It has an urban population of 21,742, having declined at an average annual rate of 0.75% year over year. It is a seaport located on the east coast of the Eyre Peninsula. It is known as the Steel City due to its integrated steelworks and shipbuilding heritage. The port of Whyalla has been exporting iron ore since 1903.
Okay, so man, we need to go easy here. I'm literally marrying a couple from Whyalla next week.
Oh, okay.
And
right.
They're podcast listeners, and they love.
Oh no,
they're lovely people.
So you're presiding over their wedding, and they've just all right. So Whyalla,
beautiful people,
nice,
tough nature strips, beautiful people,
good, excellent people who are destined for happy marriage. Hang on, we've got famous people here from Whyalla. It's quite a long list, but I don't really know any of them. Oh, the Wakeland brothers, AFL footballers, Darryl and Shane.
Oh yeah,
and they have their cousin James. I worked with at the Adelaide Advertiser. I know very well. So the Wakeland football brothers are from Whyalla. All right, let's get out of here before we dig ourselves any deeper with the people of what do you call people from Whyalla? Whyallans?
Wyallans, Wyallarans, Wyallamites.
I like Wyallamites. Yeah, I don't know.
Spent more time on my Whyalla than we planned to in the rundown.
Yeah. There you go. You just never know. Ideas for a podcast. Who's going to go first today?
I have a funny idea that just is more of a on the way sort of idea, which maybe I can start with to warm you up.
Is on the way means one you had while driving your car to the office?
Well, yes, actually, because it's I've come from playing a game of tennis. As you can see, I'm in like tennis gear and stuff, and I'm all sort of hot and sweaty.
You don't look like you're in tennis gear. You look like you're in an English 90s band. Like, with the shell suit and the fearless suit, and you look more like,
Well, that's true. Damon Albarn wore the feeler sort of jacket a lot in the 90s from the band Blur.
Yeah, you do look a bit Damon Albarn.
Well, thank you. Do you know, there's some guys at the tennis club the other day, because I'm just getting to know them. We're sitting around with three guys afterwards, and they go, "Oh, Tim, I've been going for a couple of months. How old are you?" And I said, "How old do you think I am?" Yeah. And these guys would be sort of late 60s, I think. And they looked at me and they go, "Oh, look, you'd be 60." Another one goes, "Yeah, I was going to say 60. The third one goes, yeah, late 50s or 60. And I was like, "Oh, great. Okay. Thanks, guys." And they go, "How old are you?" And I said, 48. And they go, "Oh, mate, we're sorry." "Oh, sorry,
I can't believe that. I'm amazed. I wouldn't have said that, man. I would never have said that.
They I don't mind looking old. I always feel like I'm look old. Maybe I'm frowning a lot because of my serves. But I'm honestly not offended, and I was trying to convey to them that I wasn't offended. But they were, even like 10 minutes later, we're talking about something else, and one of the guy goes, "No, seriously, sorry about that with the age, mate." I said, "Look, it really is. It really is."
I get the opposite at my tennis club, because I play with some of the senior guys, because I qualify for some of the senior leagues and stuff.
Yeah,
and they don't think they're surprised I qualify, and they're like, yeah, they always think I'm younger than I am. They're always like, "Oh, of course you won today. You're so much younger than us." And I'm like, I'm not that much younger than you guys.
Well, I made a small internal decision to up the exercise and up the tennis, and but anyway, I'm semi-retired around these parts, man.
That's interesting. It's a game the Times newspaper, as I think I've said this before. The Times newspaper every day has a list of people whose birthday it is today, like famous people, and I often will read through that list to my wife, and she has to guess the age of the people. Guessing people's ages is a real sport in our house. She's very good at it.
Well, getting back to my idea is like, and immediately after you've just most of the time you hear sports people interviewed, it's immediately after the game. And they've really got not a lot to say. And there's, they're huffy and puffy and, "Oh, geez, yeah, man. And guys, you go, "Oh, g'day, Bazza. Thanks, mate, for this and all that." And I was thinking, half jokingly, probably the worst podcast idea would be two people who have just played, coming off, sitting down, microphones on the ready and talking about, you know what I mean? Whatever the sport, commentating on the sport in that sort of annoying, breathy, out of breath, sweaty, full of in-jokes, and I couldn't believe it, and short language kind of way that we do immediately after playing sport.
Are you talking like two average people, like, you and I, or are you talking like, Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer?
I'm talking people who you would actually want to listen to on a podcast. So, yeah. So maybe there was some interest in the banter, but yeah, anyway, that was the idea I had as I came in feeling sweaty and tired.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is that there's such a push now in sport for the interviews to happen as soon as possible after the games, on the field, That's such a part of sports culture now. I think we get a lot of that anyway. We don't have the two opponents talking to each other. That's a bit of a unique twist, I guess. But I don't know. And like you say, I don't know. I don't think it's the best time to talk to people.
No, it's not. It's not. But what if you were a person who owned your own content, even though you were playing an elite sport? So you'd come off and let's say the channel that's, like hosting it comes over to you with a microphone and you go, nope, and you go over to your own microphone, record your own thing and put it up for your OnlyFans. You know what I mean? Like it's like my comments are strictly my own product and my own content to be released on my own show.
The problem is in most sport they sign contracts that they have to interview the rights holder. But yeah, I hear you.
No, that's right. Yeah,
that's right.
I won't be doing that.
No. I'd be very upset if you signed a contract with another podcast to talk to after each Unmade podcast. Instead of doing the request room, Tim goes off and does his own. Sorry, Brady. As soon as I hit stop, Tim's gone. He's off to his other podcast to talk about the podcast he just did.
like a rival request room. Yeah. I should set this up and have people send questions to me, and I do my own request room after yours separately. Oh, that's great.
Do you want to hear my crappy quick idea?
Yes.
So I've been very inspired by Banksy, the guerrilla graffiti artist. He's been out and about again lately in London. I think he went a whole week in London recently where he was graffitiing animal-themed stencils onto walls, and that he also did one on the gates of the London Zoo. So it was a week of Banksy. What's he up to? What's he going to do next? And I thought, what would happen if we were like guerrilla podcasters, like the Banksy of podcasters, right?
Yeah.
And I know I talked about residencies in the past, doing a podcast residency. But what about if you did guerrilla podcasts and you went and recorded quick podcasts in places where you're not allowed to, where you're not supposed to be? Like you and I would sneak into a museum or something where you're not allowed to record, and photos and recordings strictly prohibited, and just do 5 minutes of quick podcasting. They struck again. Where have they podcasted this time? Oh my God, they podcasted on the centre court at Wimbledon. Oh, those sneakies. Oh, they podcasted in the Parliament in London. Where are they going to strike next? Guerrilla podcasters.
The King's bedroom in Buckingham Palace or something like that.
Yeah. Like illicit podcast. I guess to make it work, you would have to, and to be more Banksy-like, you would have to be like anonymous and people not know who the hosts are as well. Oh, those mystery podcasters. I don't know who they are, but how do they keep podcasting from amazing places?
You've got to somehow prove that you were there.
Yeah,
which is hard to do audibly.
Yes. Yeah. Tim and I actually are podcasting from Buckingham Palace right now, in case you didn't know. Yeah, no, you need proof.
So which I guess you could just do with a photo. Here we are, obviously clearly a photo
with
inside
your microphones and
with your microphones. That's right, with something there that's proven, which is then easy to fake actually, but by some butler at Buckingham Palace. But I think there's something to this idea. There is something to it. I do. It needs a carrying theme or something about what you're talking about when you're there that makes it more interesting. Yeah, but I think there's something to it. It would also be a lot of fun.
And risky.
Or
I love the idea of being anonymous too, though. That would be cool.
Yeah. We're pretty much anonymous. Some people have actually heard of you, but we're pretty much anonymous. There's actually a lot of podcasters that are anonymous, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to that idea. I'm going to think about that some more.
Okay.
Can I just make one comment about Banksy though?
Yes.
I'm not saying Banksy's jumped the shark, but I feel like Banksy fans have jumped the shark. There is an exhibition in Adelaide a couple of years ago with Banksy's stuff, and now it's gone to Melbourne. And it seems to me an exhibition is the antithesis of what Banksy's supposed to be. It's just so, it's truly the story that things that are on the edge make their way into the mainstream. And going to it, paying to go to an exhibition of Banksy stuff in an art gallery seems to be not very Banksy, would it?
I've told the story of meeting Banksy, haven't I, on the podcast, or have I not?
You have, yeah.
I have told that. Go find it somewhere. It's somewhere in an old episode. Go and listen to every previous 149 episodes and you'll stumble over it somewhere, no doubt.
So this is episode 150. That's worthy of note. There we go.
Is it?
150. It is.
Round
century
number.
and a half.
Yep.
I mean, we've done a few more because of the other bits and pieces, the specials and stuff. But
yep.
Yeah, well, congratulations. Happy 150th episode, man.
Same to you. Shall we celebrate by giving away a few things to Patreon supporters?
Yes, let's do that.
I think we should give an Unmade podcast keyring, one of our famous Australian nut leather keyrings, handcrafted in England, to Kyle from Japan. Kyle from Japan.
I was going to say the same thing. Kyle from Japan.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you, me, and the random algorithm have all agreed that Kyle from Japan should receive a keyring.
A worthy winner.
Worthy indeed. And we'll also send some Spoon of the Week collector cards to Jason from Wisconsin, Graham from San Diego, and Bram from the Netherlands.
Nice. Bram. That's a second Bram I've heard in my life.
Yeah.
I've heard of another Bram who did some work for us when we were renovating our home. A good man, Bram.
And like Bram Stoker, like wrote Dracula.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Bram Stoker too, the Dracula guy. Yeah. I feel like the stand-in drummer for U2 might be called Bram as well. So suddenly they're everywhere.
All right. Well, there you go. And people who've also won presents in the past, Patreon supporters, I am going to do a big postal day soon. I'm a little bit behind. So you may have heard your name over the last month or two and thought, oh, they said my name, but I never got the gift. You haven't been forgotten. I'm going to do a big postal day soon. It's been a bit crazy in my life at the moment, so I haven't had as much time as I normally would.
You've been doing a lot of architect jobs, man.
Yeah. Houses to be designed. So, should we do a proper podcast idea? You got like what's your other one?
I do have an idea, and I don't have a name for it, but I think it could be called Who Am I 14? I read the other day that scientists generally predict that there has been, or estimate that there has been 117 billion people like ever. Like that have ever existed. Homo sapiens.
We're not, no, man. We respect all people's sexuality here.
That's right. There are. That's an oldie but a goodie, man. What are you doing?
If you're going to leave the fruit hanging that low, I'm going to pick it, all right?
A joke, 150 years old. Yeah, well done.
That joke was made the day the first human existed.
There are 117 billion people that have ever lived, right? Which means that there are about, for every person who is alive today, there are 14 other people that are dead.
I haven't fact-checked Tim's mathematics there. I'm absolutely positive he's made some mistake somewhere, but...
Now come on, man.
I'm going to go with your assumption, because it's famously people always say, there are more people alive today than have died. That's like a famous thing people say, which is wrong.
Well, that's just not true. Yes,
no,
totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't know what the correct numbers are. I'm going to go with Tim's numbers, that there are 14 deads for every alive at the moment.
So who are your 14? Who are your 14? That's a pretty interesting kind of, like, there are 14 people that are alive for me. And I was thinking about comparing, if I was to stand...
Hang on, no, what do you mean? Who are your 14? What do you mean, who are your 14? What do you even mean? What are you talking about?
Well, if there are 14 people that are, mathematically, there are 14 people dead for every person that's alive, that means that there's 14 people dead for, you're one of 15 and I'm one of 15 who have ever existed. And if you were to get 117 and you were to randomize them and slot and pull out 15 random people throughout all of history, that would be an interesting collection to compare who they were.
Right.
So thinking about me, my living standards, my life, my wealth, my height, my age, you know what I mean? And just compare that. If there was some way of being able to collate, I can't say you can't do this with individual people, but with nationalities and with continents and with cultures and with time, to pull out 14 other random people and use that as a way of exploring culture and history and time and the circumstances and context of their life and comparing it to each other.
Nice. It would make a good show. So you'd have like, hi, I'm Tim Hine. You know, I live in Adelaide. This is my life. And then you have 14 other people all through history. Here's a person who, it would be good if they were somehow linked. I mean, you could almost get away with it here. You could almost make them all Timothys, because you've got a name that's old enough that you could probably go back a long time. But it'd be good if they were somehow linked, or they were all preachers, or they were all...
Well, let's say we did it when I turned 50, and they're all 50-year-old men, although that's quite a long time to live the further you go back. I get what you're saying. But essentially a specimen. But that's the point. It's like they're all like me now, that yours are like you now, and then other people think about it, who it is for them. Because apart from using it just as a way of randomly exploring, you know, the breadth and the depth of history and like anthropology, people, you could also do it with different people. So you get a guest on and say, you know what I mean? And you pull them up and say, well, who are your 15? And you see who you are in the midst of it. I like it. It's very it's a very sort of BBC idea. I can imagine them making a TV show, or I don't think it's one of those ideas where you should have a different guest each time and they have 14 people. I like it as a 14-part series, like a limited series. With an expert.
Yeah, with a guide who's they're like the comparison point. They're the touchstone, you know. This person 600 years ago didn't have penicillin that I have, or they didn't have, you know, electricity, or I mean, you pretty quickly get to didn't have anything, but I like it.
But you also can look let's talk today. We're talking houses. Let's look at the 14 people, what their houses were. That's another way to go to cross-sect it through that way.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you introduce the 14 at the start, and then you have a different theme each week. Yeah. The biggest problem with that idea, as I'm just talking now quite meta as a concept, is it's a lot of people to hold in your head as a listener or a viewer. When you say, so this week we're doing housing, and, you know, Billy McBillison from Scotland in 1738, he had this kind of house. And I'm like, oh, okay, Billy, which one's him? Oh, yeah, that's right. And then, I feel like it's a lot of people to hold in your head. That would make it a bit tricky, but not insurmountable.
Bit more than a cricket team, not as much as an Australian rules football team. Is there a sport that has 15 people exactly?
You keep muddling it because you talk about my 14 and you keep using the number 14, and then you keep using 15 because you're including yourself as well. So you need to land on a number here.
My 14 was the name that I thought up. Who are my 14? And it's another way of comparing, you know, to be reminded of how blessed and lucky you are. You know what I mean? Of realizing, actually, in terms of wealth, like in terms of dental care, going back through, we've got it pretty good, you know, compared to those that have even coming a century before. On the other hand, we have more products that rot your teeth now. And in terms of healthcare and, you know, all those sorts of different ways, it's another way of exploring the difference of modern life and ancient life through the different ages, the Bronze Age and the Ice, you know, and all that you go back through.
I hear you.
The Middle Ages and beyond. So that's another way to do it. You could be more specific. You could actually pick out 15 today and then 14 other periods and explore them back through time as a way of doing that. Okay.
Decent idea.
This is the trouble when I have a decent idea, is that you don't have anything to say because you can't mock it.
Well,
come on.
No, I like it. Yeah. I kind of, I'm a bit bored by it. I sort of think like it'd get a bit samey because so many of those, you know, yes, we have good medicine. Yes, we have electricity. Yes, they lived not as long back then. It'd have to be, you know, it'd have to be well done. You'd have to bring those 14 people to life, so to speak, and definitely by making them real people, not just make them specific people. But then it gets really hard because after a few hundred years, you sort of very quickly get into a period where it's really hard to get records of people.
Yeah.
So it's not without challenges, but I think it has a lot of potential, and I like the framing.
Do you know what would really make it? A big reveal episode where it's like, and here they are.
We've brought them all back to life using DNA found in amber. Do you want to hear my second idea?
What have you got? Have you got something even more long and boring?
Yes, I do. So I had this, initially the idea was called Before My Time. And it was a podcast where you only ever spoke about things and stuff that happened before you were born. Mm-hmm. But then I thought, that's not that great an idea, because basically it's just a history podcast, and most interesting things in history happened before I was born. So the fact it happened before I was born doesn't really mean anything. And I kind of sort of stalled on the idea and thought, nah, there's nothing there. But then I had the idea this morning, hang on, what if Before My Time was a podcast where people spoke about things that happened the day before they were born?
Oh, the day before?
Literally a day before your time. The eve, your birthday eve. So I've looked up the day before I was born to find out what happened. And I've looked up the day before you were born to find out what happened.
See, I was alive the day before you were born.
You were alive, yes. You were on Earth before me.
We can tell me yours first.
Okay. The 17th of June, 1976. The day before I was born. I'll tell you who was born the day before I was born. A guy called Sven Nys, who's a Belgian mountain biker and cyclocrosser. Mm-hmm. He's a really big deal in the world of cyclocrossing, whatever that is. I've never heard of him, but he's a big deal. As is Peter Svidler, the Russian chess grandmaster, also born the day before me. And also born the day before me is a guy called Scott Adkins from England, and he's an action film star. And he's in loads and loads of films that have lots of fighting in them, but I'd never heard of him. So, and someone who died the day before I was born was a guy called Lord Casey, who was the Governor General of Australia from 1965 to 1969, a great statesman.
That's an interesting angle as well, because it's like they're passing on the baton. You know what I mean? Like the son, he gives it and hands it to you, and you take it from here, son.
Yeah, who died the day before or the day you were born. In sport, the National Basketball Association, the NBA, and the American Basketball Association agreed to a merger which resulted in 4 ABA teams: the Denver Nuggets, the Indiana Pacers, the New York Nets, and the San Antonio Spurs being admitted into the NBA. So those 4 famous basketball teams that are still NBA teams now.
Oh, right. That's interesting. Yeah. Because I think they became the New Jersey Nets, didn't they? And then now they're the Brooklyn Nets.
There's not much else really, like the day before I was born. Indonesia annexed Portuguese East Timor, which, is kind of a thing. There was like a court decision in America that wasn't very interesting. Not really much.
Do you feel like the world was perhaps resting, knowing that it was going to be, it's a bit like, have a quiet one today because tomorrow's
huge.
Wow.
Yeah. Tomorrow is the day.
It's like Christmas Eve, you know what I mean? Let's have a quiet one tonight because tomorrow someone's going to be born who's going to be very important. Yeah.
Save your energy. The big man's arriving tomorrow.
Then Casey, Lord Casey was like, well, I'm just going to rest here for a while. And then he died.
Yeah. The 27th of April, 1976, day before Tim made his appearance, was a 37 of 88 people on an American Airlines flight died when their Boeing 727 overran the runway in the Virgin Islands. As someone who takes an interest in airline crashes, that's a big one. And there were also 11 Malaysian Armed Forces military personnel died in a helicopter crash. They were shot down by terrorists, so I guess that's not really a crash if you get shot down. 2 big aviation incidents. A US patent was granted for what became Gore-Tex, the waterproof fabric.
Oh, right.
The day before Tim was... And there was another patent granted that day for something called Hex, which is a sort of a climbing equipment which is used to get holds between cracks in rocks without using drills and bolts. So 2 big patents. We have to have a religion one because it's Tim. Pope Paul VI elevated 19 bishops to the status of Roman Catholic cardinals, including 2 who were not identified at the time because they were from Vietnam and Czechoslovakia, and it was thought it would put them in risk.
Oh, right.
If it was known they'd become cardinals. This declaration increased the College of Cardinals from 117 to 136. So a bunch of new...
Why do you think he was getting all that done before I came along?
I know. I tell you what, I went down such a rabbit hole. I even went and read about that Vietnamese guy that became a cardinal. I was like, oh, why did it have to be a secret? And it turns out he then went on to be in the 2 conclaves for Pope John Paul and Pope John Paul II, which happened very close to each other because Pope John Paul died very quickly. So they were 2 famous conclaves, and he was in both of them, and then he died the next month. So he got to be in those famous conclaves, and then he passed on. Also, the unsuccessful Broadway musical So Long 174th Street opened at the Harkness Theatre, and it would close 2 weeks later after only 16 performances. There you go. And births, you've got Sally Hawkins, an English film and stage actress who's been in a couple of Woody Allen movies, including Blue Jasmine, and is known to many people as the mum in Paddington, the Paddington movies.
Right.
Javier Vasquez, the Cuban-born mixed martial artist. And dying on that day was Naeem Hashmi, Pakistani character actor on film, television, and stage. Day before you were born. Before your time. But you're not expected to know that, Tim.
No.
That was before your time.
Oh, it was. It was.
Yeah.
Just. Yes.
Just, yeah.
Wow. There's not a lot of significance in this one either, is there? I mean,
No. Like, you could, like, if you were going to have guests on a podcast where you were doing this each week, you'd probably actually do their birth date, wouldn't you? You wouldn't do the day before their birthday.
The day before. Unless it's only really interesting if they just miss something.
I just wanted the gimmick of before my time. Just.
Did anything else happen before your time?
What happened 2 days before I was born?
We can work out what back.
Next week, 3 days.
Something interesting happens.
Eventually we'll hit something big. You wouldn't go far back from mine and we'd hit your birth date.
That's right. Yeah, I came along. I'm a bit like John the Baptist, just preparing the way for you, really, aren't I, man?
Yeah, that's how I like to think of you. Tim the Baptist.
I'm a voice crying in the wilderness. He's coming soon.
People, get in touch with us and tell us what happened the day before you were born. Whoever has the biggest, most amazing thing that happened the day before they were born wins some kudos.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I would be interested if something happened significantly. I remember when I was a kid thinking, I sort of crossed over with Elvis Presley just for like 1 year. He died in 1977. But as I talked about in my last episode, I then became indifferent to him after that. But I do remember having that thought as a kid.
All right.
You do think about that, don't you? Because whenever events happen when you're a kid, you compare it to, was I alive? Was I not alive at that moment? It is a big line in your mind. So
that's why the day before you were born, I think, is quite fun. Like, Anyway, that was my idea.
Only something interesting had happened. Yes, nice.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You and I were just born at crap times. I mean, the 70s were just generally crap anyway, weren't they?
You reckon the 70s? There's something about the 70s that feels real in films in a way that the 60s doesn't and the 80s doesn't, I think.
No.
I always think of it like it's the most recent purely analog kind of era. Don't you reckon? I know, I'm not saying there wasn't I'm sure there was digital technology, but it doesn't appear in anything.
I just still think the 70s is a dud decade. Like all during like the 80s and the 90s and the noughties even, you'd talk about like the 70s being a dud. And I always thought, well, as time goes on, the era of dudness would move and you wouldn't think, and like the 70s would become, you'd start looking at them differently. But I don't think that's ever happened. I still think the 80s are kind of cool and the 60s are obviously cool. And I still think the 70s are just, I don't know, they didn't quite land it. I know cool stuff happened. You know, Star Wars was made in the 70s
But Star Wars is an 80s movie, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's the 80s really started with Star Wars. But I think that the 70s feels real. Like, I was watching a Clint Eastwood movie the other day, like Dirty Harry or something, a year ago, not the other day. And everything feels like hard and real. Like, there's nothing electronic anywhere. Like, the cars are metal. Everything's metal and there are hard surfaces everywhere. Even his face is like a hard surface, and jackets and offices. Everything's kind of, you know what I mean? Feels tangibly itself. Whereas you get to the 80s and everything's kind of, I don't know, digitized or colored or got flashy lights or cushy or cushiony. Oh, there's something, I don't know. There's something about the 70s that feels authentic, whereas the 80s feels like it's got a gloss over it of some kind. But of course, that's a ridiculous idea. Yeah.
Well, I reckon that's it for now. We are going to retire to the request room, though, and answer a few questions from Patreon supporters. Go patreon.com/unmade FM. Join. Do it.
And supporters of Tim can come across to my request room, which is...
Tim does another episode after the request room where people can make requests about things they heard in the request room.
For my OnlyFans. That's right. Only Tim fans to come. Where I'll be asking myself questions and answering them. Yep. Basically, which won't actually go to air because Brady does all the work and he's only doing it on the proper request room. All
right. Come join us, people.